Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of ECH Postgame Live, presented by Flatstick Pub. Wish there were better circumstances here after join you after another frustrating shootout loss. It's been 570 days since the Kraken have won a shootout. And this one is a frustrating game, as I see in chat here already. Therapy time there from Tammy. Yeah, we'll break this one all down. We'll try and talk through it. And some extra good news, though. We'll start off with some good news, is that Dylan actually is live at Mullet Arena right now. So he's talking to the players and the coaches, kind of doing the whole role reversal thing, what I usually do it after games. And so he'll be joining us a little bit later with the reaction live from Mullet Arena in Arizona. So everyone stick around for that. We'll have Dylan on here a little bit later. It'll be interesting to see kind of what his takeaways were from this game. But before we get into chat and get started, just want to shout out our sponsor, Flatstick Pub. Sponsors every one of these ECH post-game live shows all season. Great place to go watch a Kraken game. And with the Kraken coming back home too, they've got some of their season-long specials that we've been sharing with you here before the game. 50% off all games at Flatstick Pub. After the game, $1 off beer. Hopefully celebrating a big Kraken win as they come back home for some very important games after this next road game in Colorado. So let's dive into chat here, and I'll do my best to keep up with it being just me. It's a little bit more difficult. I'm not as used to it as Dylan is. Dylan always does a great job with this. But let's start here with Coop. So darn frustrating. PK is literally a 5-on-3 every time with this current strategy. Kraken still unable to score at all in a shootout. At least Matty had 2 assists. Yeah, I mean, the PK, I think that's kind of the headline for me in this game. That's the real story. Yes, the shootout struggles, that does suck. You know, it's an issue, but it just doesn't come up that often. The PK is costing them games right now, and I think tonight is certainly no exception. You look, the Coyotes scored on the same exact play twice. I mean, it doesn't get much more frustrating than that. They ran the same play and it worked to perfection both times. And you could see this was really the indication of how the Kraken's PK is just so passive that you allow the Coyotes to run this play without a whole lot of interference there, even when you've already seen it. Just there's so much time and space for the guy at the point to work. There's time and space for the bumper slot to feed that pass back to the outside. It's just too much time, and the PK really, you got to look in the mirror here and figure out the adjustments to make. This one from Jessica, super chat. Thank you, Jessica. Why don't we ever put our game's best player in the shootout? Tovey had 1 goal, 1 apple, 4 shots on goal. Why not try him? It's a good question. I mean, you know, I'm in support of the all defenseman strategy, and I know that's maybe a little bit off the wall, but seriously, one thing that a lot of coaches will do is they will go to the players who are playing best in that particular game. They don't necessarily have, shootout specialists unless you get guys who are just really good at it in general. And given the Kraken struggles, I think I'd be fine with that kind of strategy. Yeah, Eli Tolvanen was playing great in this game. Yanni Gourde was playing great in this game. Maybe see some of those guys. At least it's something different. But yeah, I mean, having a guy like Jordan Eberle who, maybe not producing a ton in this game. And then I know he's got good career shootout numbers, but with the Kraken, he's scored like next to nothing. I don't know why they keep trying the same exact thing. You need to see some changes there. We saw some changes at least from Hackstall last time, putting Beniers in the shootout lineup. I think, he's had a couple close calls, but still, I think that's a fine idea to try Eli Tolvanen or somebody who's playing well in that game. Let's see. Schultz, anyone else just turn off and move on with their day when it went to a shootout? I did not really have the opportunity to do that. I had to watch the whole thing unfold, hoping that maybe a defenseman or somebody different would step over the boards. But yeah, I understand if that's your feeling after this point. Like, look, they haven't scored a goal. I was trying to look it up when the last time they actually scored a goal in the shootout was. Maybe someone can help me out and chat with that. But again, just 3 shootout attempts and no goals scored. Like, you can't expect the goalie to stop them all. And even if he does, you still have to score at some point to win the shootout. Jessica, yeah, I think we can sit Ebbs on shootouts for a while. Yeah, I agree. He's got good career numbers, but just hasn't been able to put it together with the Kraken. And yeah, everyone I see just kind of agreeing with that sentiment about just, it's over, when the shootout starts. Gary, first and second lines not showing much again. I mean, the first line, the new look first line, I guess, if you want to call it that. They didn't play the most minutes, I think, but the Beniers line, they just keep generating offense. They keep creating chances. And gosh, you look at the expected goals in this game, and it's super lopsided, 4.2 to 2.3 for the Kraken. But yeah, I mean, the top line, actually they played the third most of any forward line, and they were generating some chances. It got bad toward the end, but yeah, I mean, really, you had the Bjorkstrand, Gord, Tolvanen line that was their first line by minutes, and yeah, it's technically the third line, and yeah, as you mentioned, like they looked pretty good. Lindsay, Matty can't buy a goal, and it hurts to watch. Not on a breakaway, not even in the shootout. That was tough to see at the end of regulation with about a minute to go. Matty Beniers on that breakaway. Just can't. And I know the broadcast was saying the puck wouldn't settle for him. Looking at it, it kind of did settle for him. He just couldn't get the move that he wanted to. He had a little bit of pressure on his back, but still, that's a tough situation. And he's got to be frustrated after all these chances he's generating. You got to wonder, if you're Matty Beniers, like, what do I have to do to score a goal at some point? I think once that first one comes, the floodgates are going to open, but after a game like this, you just wonder when that's going to be. Also, as far as Hackstall putting Beniers in the shootout lineup, I know he's been cold recently, and I know he might not be one of the shooters I'd go with, but man, just giving him an opportunity on a breakaway chance like that, if he scores, maybe that can be the kind of thing that gets him going. It won't technically be his first goal of the season, but that'd be huge for his confidence. I think just at least taking a chance that could happen, I support putting him out there in the shootout. Christian, bummed they couldn't get a win for Joey. I know this clearly meant a lot to him playing a game in that building. I mean, that he kind of helped build, right? I talked to him actually after the Vegas game last year. It was the one right after the Arizona game, about the chance to play in just the final minute of that game. They put him in with about a minute to go, and it was great to hear from him, just like how important it was that he was part of that program. And what stuck with me too was him talking about what the coach would say of, be the tradition. You kind of had to believe in yourself and believe that you could do things that no one before you had done. And that sticks in Joey's mind. He talked to some ASU hockey players earlier today also. Still really important for him to get into that game. More shootout contents. Yeah, lots of shootout stuff. Schultz, Dunn looking frustrated, making mistakes. Need to start making healthy scratches. No one is worried about getting scratched for poor play. I will say Vince Dunn, like, he is scoring at a top rate. He's, I think, going into this game was tied for the team's top scorer. But I do think he is making mistakes. He's taking unnecessary penalties. You look at the one that gave the Coyotes the tying goal on the power play. Like, that's a cross check, plain and simple. And it's one where I know he felt like the Coyote, I think it was Clayton Keller, went down a little bit easy. The Kraken had some complaints about that tonight. And even though that might be the case, you can't give him any excuse to do that. That was a cross check right into the back. And you don't need to do that at that point in the game. And I do think that he's let that kind of stuff get under his skin a little bit much. He's making mistakes in the D zone too. Lucky that none of them cost the Kraken in terms of goals on the scoreboard. But yeah, I wouldn't healthy scratch him at this point, but I do think just the counting stats aren't fully indicative of maybe some of the mistakes he's making. And yeah, Lindsay, how many turnovers did Dunn have this game? Because it felt like a lot. It was a lot. I noticed a lot of them. He did have a lot of turnovers. I didn't feel like clipping all the videos of it together, but yeah, there were definitely some low lights in this one for him. Yeah, Sean agreeing Vince Dunn was bad, and saying, this is not good. And these next 4 games could be nightmares. Joey played well. Yeah, the next 4 games, it is a tough stretch. You got Colorado, Edmonton. Thankfully, Edmonton is not right now what we thought they'd be at the start of the season. So hopefully that's not as tough as we would normally expect them to be. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be a real tough kind of make or break stretch for the Kraken coming up here. You lose these next 4 and it is absolutely panic time. So I think they know the seriousness of the situation. Thankfully you did bank a point here. I mean, that does help you, but you're not feeling a whole lot better after this game. Let's see. I mean, definitely a lot of frustration here in the chat. I see you, Coop. I see you, Michael, just talking about the lack of changes. And I do think the team needs to look inward, kind of find some of these changes. I've seen a few people, including Jay right here, saying Joey looks really good. I agree. I think Joey Decord looked good in this game, and certainly this was not his fault. I know it's not a quality start. He's got the negative 0.61 goals saved above expected, but he made some big saves. And if you look at the Coyotes' goals, two of them against were shorthand, were on the power play. So that's always tougher for a goalie to stop. Like those one-timers that the Kraken gave up for the Coyotes' goals, like on the power play, those are so difficult to stop. There's a reason that Alex Ovechkin, can just uncork those from that spot his whole career, and no one can stop it, even though they know it's coming. If you get that shot away, it's just so hard to stop. So I do think Joey had a pretty good game in this one. It's certainly not his fault. And he stopped 2 out of 3 in the shootout. Like you hope to at least get 1 goal of support there to help him out. Go check yourself. Gordon Tolvanen had a good game, so we got that going for us. Yeah, I really like that line. The Gord, Tolvanen, and Bjorkstrand line back together kind of as we knew it from last season, and they just picked up right where they left off. By ice time, they were the Kraken's first line. I think by the level of play, they were the Kraken's first line. They were buzzing all around the puck tonight. And Yanni Gord, man, was so driven. I know he took 3 minor penalties in this game, and he was upset about all 3 of them too. I mean, couple of them you could argue maybe soft calls, but look, they were calling it that way all night. You got to figure that out. But Yanni, he just felt like after every single one, he was motivated to go out there and make up for it. So good play from that line. Yeah, Nicole agreeing on Vince Dunn. Yeah, it seems like we've got some consensus on some of these things here. The PK and shootout problems, Vince Dunn needing to be better. Yeah, the basics. If that Bjorky shot is 2 inches to the left, we win in OT. I know the overtime, just back and forth. There were a few good chances for both teams. But I did notice toward the end, the Coyotes were playing pretty conservatively in that overtime. And, it kind of benefits them to do that when the Kraken are so bad at shootouts. So I wonder if that's something other teams are going to start doing once it gets to overtime. Just play as conservative as you can and try and force the issue, make the Kraken force the issue. Let's see. I'm going to grab some water for a bit. Here, comment from Daniel. It can play with your head when you score so early in the game. I mean, the Kraken did score very early on, and maybe you're tempted to think that, okay, this is going to be an easy win or something close to it. And I guess it makes sense that you might be tempted that way, thinking that you just scored on a 2-on-0. The way that goal came together too. I mean, I was watching that play and I'm like, oh boy, this is like some bottom of the standings Coyotes type stuff I remember from years ago, where you've got both defensemen pinching, nobody realizing it, and it's a 2-on-0 all of a sudden. And it was ugly. And credit to the Kraken for taking advantage of it. Credit to Alexiak for making a good read on that pass. But like, that's on Arizona. And yeah, maybe they did think that it would be a little easier than it was. But again, this is a trend with the Kraken. In the first period, they play really well. Second and third, they can kind of fall apart and be their own worst enemy. So it's something they've got to look at and just figure out why that's going on. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of the coaching adjustments that we saw last year. Sean, truth is that the Kraken are about as on par with Arizona, actually not nearly as offensively talented. So OT is not that surprising. It's just how it got there that hurts. Undisciplined nonsense. Yeah, I mean, the Coyotes, as much as that first play, with the 2-on-0 may have said otherwise, like they do have talent. They are a good team. And they can play anyone close. They're a 500 team. I think I said this whether it was last post game or on the deep dive earlier this week. I thought the Coyotes would be a really good next opponent for the Kraken because they're a 500 team. And if you play a good game, you should beat a 500 team. And if you don't play a good game, you should lose to a 500 team. And I think the Kraken were kind of somewhere in between here. And so they end up going to a shootout, which is, essentially just tied through regulation and overtime, where they had good plays. They had moments they played well, but just the undisciplined nonsense, as you say, Sean, like that's been bugging me all season. Just taking penalties when you don't need to, making undisciplined plays, like it is costing them games. From Scott here, looked like Wenny's best game of the year so far. I might agree with you, actually. Yeah, I posted the video of him making that nice kind of ankle breaking move around the Coyotes defender. He looked really confident in this one. He was, being his normal playmaker self, but, he had a lot more confidence, I think, with the puck and was trying things maybe he wouldn't otherwise try. So good game from Alex Wenberg. I think that is a bright spot in this one. Let's see. Rebecca, RJ stuck with ECH therapy tonight. At least if at the start, Dylan's coming. Dylan will be here to help out with the therapy tonight. He'll be on in a little bit. I am interested to see what he has to say about this one, being in the building, if the feeling was kind of any different for him or watching it unfold. Because, there's always those conversations that happen in the press box, even though there isn't a proper press box in Arizona. It's just a little velvet rope kind of separating everyone from the fans. But I'm curious kind of what the feeling was in the building there, and especially what the players had to say. So Dylan will be joining us at some point here. So stick around for that. T-Wind, Colorado next. Yeah, that'll be a challenge. That's for sure. Everyone's still hating shootouts. Scott, a lot of line juggling, looking for the right combos over the last few games. Hope Hack finds the winning setup soon. Yeah, I mean, Hackstall has had the line blender out these last few games, just trying to find something, trying to find a spark. And I think most of the changes that he's made have made sense. Even the one, moving McCann back up to the Beniers line, moving Yamamoto onto that line. I think I liked elements of their game tonight, and it takes longer than one game to get that chemistry together. But I do think there's potentially promising things there. You look at the Schwartz, Wenberg, Eberle line, which I would never have thought to put together, and they've actually been one of the stronger lines for the Kraken since they've been put together. So hopefully you just kind of see things that stick, and you could kind of build off of that. See more shootout stuff. I know it's frustrating. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it one more time here. The Kraken need to go with an all defense shootout lineup. Alexiak, Borgen, and Adam Larson. That's it. That's how you win the shootout. I'm on record. Let's see. Ricky Wenberg, 23-20 of ice time, 340 on the PK. Yeah, big ice time game for Alex Wenberg. I'm looking at this right here. Yeah, over 23 and a half minutes of ice time. That is a lot for a forward. I wonder when the last time he's had that much ice time is. I usually like to look those up and kind of see when that has happened last. But yeah, Alex Wenberg. And I like this about Dave Hackstall, that he sees Wenberg's having a good game, as we just discussed earlier, and some of you have pointed out. He sees Wenberg's having a good game, and he rewards him with extra ice time. I do like that about his coaching style. All right, so we've got Dylan here live from Mullet Arena. So he's just about to join us here. Let me get this all ready for you. Let's do the loading Dylan. Here we go. All right, we've got Dylan here live from Mullet Arena. Yeah, thanks for the view there. I mean, that is just a special barn. Glad to have you on here. I'm glad you got your ECH quarter zip. Good to see it. Looks good on you.
Yes, no, it's fantastic. Love that I finally get to have one of these.
Yep. So very happy for you. As frustrating as the end of this game was, I mean, it's been kind of the obvious thing so far. People talking about the PK, about the shootout struggles. Yeah. Vince Dunn maybe needing to play a little bit better. But I'm curious overall, what was the feeling there, kind of in the press box, watching that game live, about how the Kraken played? Because I know the shootout puts a sour taste in everyone's mouth. The Kraken actually losing this game and not getting the 2 points out of it. But I know after the first period, you said that you thought they actually were playing okay. Just thoughts on how the Kraken did tonight.
Yeah, I thought at 5-on-5, the Kraken played really well, right? I thought they dictated play a lot. I thought that, certainly when the Matty Beniers line was out there, I thought the Wenberg line played really well. And you were just looking at these situations where, play is almost exclusively in the Coyotes' own zone. It was just the fact that they couldn't stay out of the box. The PK struggles continued. And that really kind of, I feel like, took away from a lot of the rest of it. Was there maybe a lack of finishing again from this team at 5-on-5? Yeah, there was. But I really felt like, for the most part, they played a really, really solid game.
Yeah, and we've seen that from the Kraken, but recently the PK has been an issue. We've got this super chat from Light here. Thank you, Light, for the super chat. It's been interesting to see that the PK that took us so far last season is now hurting us. I think the team is good, but man, I hope they get out of this slump. I have faith, still not as bad as year one. So let's kind of, take that to talk about the PK a little bit. The Coyotes scoring twice on the same exact play. I don't know if that's something you all noticed in the building right away, but it certainly struggled tonight. And did the players and Haxtell have anything to say about that?
Yeah, well, so Haxtell did talk about it. Lexiak talked about it. From Haxtell, it's just, look, they're not dictating play, right? They're not in control of what's going on out there when they are killing a penalty. And that's certainly evident when watching the Kraken PK. You mentioned the fact that they score on the same play. Again, yeah, you pick that up right away because it's, it just feels like it continues to happen. I mean, this is like a different variation from, like, say, the Gostisbehere goal from 2 weeks ago or the Yossi goal from last week, but it's all basically that same idea of, if you can just move the puck around on the perimeter like that, at some point you're going to give a shooter a really good look where they can just tee one up and catch the goalie by surprise. And the Kraken have no answer for it right now. I mean, really, the answer for it was sitting up, a few seats down from me and Brandon Tanev, right? Like, he is the answer to this. It still feels like that is what they're missing. But I think Haxtell's right when he says they are not dictating play. There's no element of this PK that looks like they are in charge, or at any given point somebody's going to step up, take the puck away, block a pass, block a shot, change possession, and be able to clear or even work down the ice, get the power kill going, doing something to help out. And then, on a night like tonight where you can't stay out of the box, Alexiak talked about, it was just hard to kind of continue the rhythm that they had 5-on-5 because they were continually taking penalties. And so, yeah, certainly when your PK is struggling, the last thing anybody would say to go and do is take a bunch of penalties the way the Kraken did tonight.
Yeah, and was there any talk about that from the players or Haxtell? Because I know the penalties were an issue in this game.
Yeah.
A lot of frustration visibly shown from the players at maybe some of the officiating, some of the calls, but also at a certain point, you've also just got to figure things out, know they're calling it tight and stay out of the box. I mean, what was the takeaway? Were there any comments on the officiating or the frustration there?
So I actually spent the first period, or the first half of the first period, kind of surprised that more things weren't called. I mean, there was that, like, one time where, was it Matty Beniers who had his stick just completely held in the offensive zone? He's kind of to the side of the net, and it's just, I mean, it was like 2 Coyotes had it. And at that point, it was like, okay, we were kind of talking, and it's like, okay, they haven't really been calling much. And then that just changed completely. At the end of the first period, it felt like that was completely out the window. So I don't want to say that the Kraken were maybe kind of lulled into a false sense of security by that early on, just because it felt like the refs weren't going to call much tonight. And then that very much changed. You've already kind of adjusted to the one, and then it kind of, slingshots back at you. But it's one where Haxtell talked about the idea of, look, they kind of felt like they had earned some power plays themselves that they didn't get the Kraken. They felt like they were out there, they were working hard. Kraken did a good job. Dick, at 5-on-5, they were getting to the nets. I thought they did a really good job of getting traffic in front. I thought they did all that stuff. And really, that's where you draw a lot of penalties, right? That's when you put a lot of pressure on the defense to be physical, to be reactionary, to have to really kind of act before they can fully think through what it is they have to do. And I thought the Kraken did, put the Coyotes in a lot of those spots tonight. And there were some calls that maybe weren't made. You still ultimately have to kind of control yourself. I'll come back to the Vince Dunn one, right, where he cross-checks Keller from behind. Like, what are you doing there? Like, you really can't do that one, especially given where the game is at that point and how the PK has been playing. Like, you got to be a little bit more situationally aware in that moment. But for the most part, I think most of us could agree that, yeah, I mean, maybe another call should have gone the Kraken's way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there were things the other way too, that, the missed Larson high stick when they're already shorthanded. I think the officiating kind of both ways maybe wasn't the best tonight, but certainly, the Kraken, they have to take responsibility for why it got to the point it did. Now, the final major point that everybody's been talking about, it was kind of the first thing we really talked about tonight, is the shootout. It's been 570 days since the Kraken have won a shootout. I don't know when the last time they scored a goal in the shootout was. Did we get anything post game about that? I know at a certain point it's just kind of a crapshoot, and there's not a whole lot you can do. It's random, but anything from Haxtell or the players at all on the shootout?
Just that, he's trying different personnel there, That's what we got.
I don't know that that's. He said this to me in year 1 too. Whereas I don't know that that's accurate. So I'll give that back to him. He said that to me after a question year 1. I felt so embarrassed. I'll hand it back to him here. I don't know about trying different personnel.
The question was asked about shaking it up, and he responded that they had.
All right, then. Let's try and avoid going to shootouts in the future then. I guess that's all I have to say about that. Yeah. Thank you for that information, though. I mean, that's the kind of thing. I was curious what he had to say about it. That's not encouraging.
No, it's not. And it's one of those, look, if this was like the biggest problem with the Kraken, right? They're like a 600 point percentage team, a 650 point percentage team, or this is, back last time I was here, where you're talking about March on a season where you're going to the playoffs. Everybody knows that you're working towards 100 points, all that great stuff. Then it can be like, okay, yeah, they really need to, maybe you can figure out this shootout thing or whatever. I just think right now, when the Kraken are struggling to finish still, when the PK is as bad as it is the shootout really top priority to really, for them to be spending their time on and really think about this thing that you're only going to find yourself in maybe 5 times a season, right? So I can give him, the benefit of the doubt there as far as like, it's not what I want. And I don't think anybody wants him spending his time on, except for these few instances where it really, feels like it. But it's, maybe a little bit more, or a little bit more of an acknowledgement around it would be nice.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not something you have to really spend time on or practice at. It's just try new players. I mean, it's as simple as making the decisions in the moment. You have these guys practice it, every few practices, all the guys just take turns and go, just give other guys a shot. And our buddy Chuck from Circling Seattle Sports pointing out, both shootouts this season, St. Louis and tonight, have been the same exact groups, Bjorkstrand, Beniers, and Everly.
Yep.
So, all right. So here, I'm going to go up in chat a little bit more while I do that. Anything else particular? Any like fun Mullet Arena kind of takeaways? What was the fan balance? I know you said there were a lot of Kraken fans there last year. How was it being inside the building?
Still a lot of Kraken fans at this one, maybe slightly less than last year, just because this year there is 2 Kraken games here. So I could see maybe some people are going to the game in March, some going to this one. But yeah, it's the same as last year, where it's an electric building. The fact that everybody's kind of all in it together, right? Everybody's just in this lower bowl together all the time. And it not only makes it more intimate, everybody's kind of got that much clearer of a view, but like I said, it kind of creates this weird sense of community between both fan bases, because it's still, a very split group as far as how many fans are here for each team. And it's unlike anything else. I wish all of them were like this, to be perfectly honest, just because I think it makes for such a special experience. And then also for us, the ability to sit kind of just up at the top of a section and hang out and have fans and ECH community members come up and say hi, shake my hand, fist bump, right? Talk Kraken. It's just awesome. I know I'm not up there in Seattle enough to be able to see a lot of people. So whenever I get to experience that, it's a lot of fun for me to see everybody. But also just, I think that makes it really accessible. Brandon Tanev able to take pictures with people just in the concourse here, because that's just where everybody's at. And I think that, again, that's one of those things that you just think about, like, that helps grow the game, right? You're making it that much closer. You're not creating divides between things, right? Got people in the section in front of us would just lean back and talk to the players there, Megna and Tanev, and it's just like it's cool. I really think that's fun. It's unique. Maybe it wouldn't work for 82 games a season, but to have a couple games like this sprinkled in, I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you got to go to this one. I know you love going out to Mullet Arena. I know from the start of the season, you're like, can I go? Can I, go on that trip? So I'm glad you were able to. Super chat here from Light. Just wanted to point out that in spite of no goals, Matty is only 1 point back of Yanni for being the team leading center for points. Food for thought. Now, that's a good observation, Light. What do you think about that, Dylan? And I guess about Matty's game as a whole. He did have 2 assists tonight.
I thought Matty played a really strong game. I thought he continued to go out there and do what he does, which is he drives possession. I mean, there was just entire sequences. I think it was at the end of the second or the start of the third where you had that one shift where the Kraken were just so solidly in the Coyotes zone that they're cycling, and then eventually it must have been the second because it was long change, and the Kraken were able to get an entire 5-man change while pinning the Coyotes in their own zone. But that started with Matty Beniers' line. Watching him tonight, I felt like he has changed his game a little bit. I felt like he wasn't necessarily going to the net as much. He wasn't driving down the middle as much as he normally does. I thought he was kind of hanging back a little bit more to make sure he could help out on defense. And boy, was he always the first forward back. A lot of times he was just kind of right there with the Coyotes rush, stopping passes from occurring just by sitting in the lane. Right. It wasn't flashy. He wasn't doing too much. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, he had to streak back on the back check and make a big play. He was just coming back with the transition, keeping them from doing what they want to do. And I think that's a really, really big deal. So I thought he had another really good game. Just can't score. And you know what? It didn't look like he necessarily tried a ton either. Right. That was one thing that I noticed was he didn't have a shot on goal until like halfway through the third period. And I believe he only finished with one shot on goal. So I don't, make of that what you will. I think, his game is so solid. You don't want him necessarily changing a ton up, but at the same time, if he's going to get one, he's got to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, you have to shoot to score usually. He actually did finish with 3 shots on goal, and that might be on that breakaway there with a minute to go. I mean, weren't we all rooting for him on that breakaway at the end of the game there? Just he could have been the hero, could have scored his first of the season. That was a huge moment, but unfortunately kind of couldn't settle on his move there. So going back into chat, and by the way, sorry if I've skipped over something in chat. Feel free to put it back at the bottom here.
I'm going back through the transcript, and it was hard because I was kind of boxed out when Hackstall was talking. I'm trying to, just because I'm still kind of hung up on the whole shootout thing. I'm trying to see. I guess it's possible he was talking about the PK. I thought they were talking about the shootout, but it's possible he meant the PK as far as shaking it up, which I did notice Matty Beniers had a shift out there, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, no, that would make sense. And we'll go back and kind of listen to it. I mean, they put the videos on the Dropbox and everything. Yeah. We'll clarify that. But no, that's good. You want to be correct on that. We got to be, good reporters, good journalists, don't want to mislead anybody. So yeah, we'll go back and kind of see after this what exactly he said. From Chris on a wave, Dunner needs to go to a meditation retreat. We did talk a fair amount about Vince Dunn and kind of needing to be a little bit better, maybe a little bit more chill. But, the penalty, but then also a lot of turnovers in the D zone, it seemed like, to me anyway. Was that something that you noticed? And, any talk about those turnovers?
A little bit, not any talk about the turnovers, but certainly in this game, the thing that stood out to me more so than the turnovers there was just how aggressive he was in the offensive zone. Felt like this was the first game where we were really seeing him really go, deep down into the offensive zone, trying to get something going there. Not really a look we've seen too much from him. He's still put up points this year. He's been better on the power play, I felt like, on the year as a whole, but he's been doing it all from the perimeter. He's kind of been running things from the back end. This was the first game where it really felt like if he saw an opening, he was just going to thread that needle and go for it. He was going to really kind of dive in there. I felt at times that left them vulnerable coming back, just because he was that extra guy up in there. So, that was more so the takeaway for me in person, was just like, wow, is he playing really aggressive tonight?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was kind of risk reward tonight, I think Vince Dunn was. And it can be frustrating when you're losing games, or when it's, a game like this where you feel like you one step forward, one step back, and you got to try and, go and take that lead again. Question from Matty here. Would a captain help this team? And we haven't really talked a whole lot about the leadership situation, given they, just went with the 4 alternates and everything. But, I think it's a valid question. Would a captain help this team at this point?
Maybe, right? I mean, if it would help deal with the situation of, when things like the McCann, Mangiapane thing happens, right? When it comes to them, as weird and terrible as it sounds, sticking up for each other, right? Showing some of that passion and toughness, whatever it is you want to call it, whatever adjective you want to use. Maybe it would help in a situation like that if there was kind of more so one person holding people accountable, instead of, a quasi leadership group approach. Maybe that's one of those things that falls through the cracks in a situation like that. I don't know. The other thing is, maybe that helps with. I had another thing and I'm just totally spacing now. What was I going to say?
All
But
good.
I do think it would help with that, for one, just to have kind of that one person. And I think this would also be a situation where, by having a single captain, somebody whose job it is to be that kind of buffer between, whether it's the team and the coaching staff, or more so this year, the team and the media, somebody who can just kind of maybe take some of the pressure off of everybody else when the team's off to a rocky start or the team's struggling finishing, right? Just somebody who can come out there and be the face of it. So instead of everybody having to feel like it's on them constantly and address that each and every day, every practice, after every game, all that kind of stuff, if there's more so one person who can kind of just take it all on themselves and let the rest of their guys, breathe a little, I feel like that's another thing that could maybe help this team. I do feel like this is the first time, though, where I've started to, kind of ask that question myself. Before, it was always, look, they've got plenty of leadership on this team. They're good to go. But right now, it feels like, they need that toughness. They need that, leadership, somebody to get on them between periods, right? I felt like that was another thing in this game. They kind of played a full 60 for the first time, or at least the first time in a long time. There wasn't really that second period lull that we're used to seeing from them. But I feel like that is something, if there was that one just strong leader in the room who was going to just really go for it and be empowered by the C, maybe that would have changed some games so far this year.
Yeah, I agree with the points that you made, but I also think the timing is tricky right now. Certainly, if you're in a bit of a slump here, and I feel like too much pressure would be put on that guy to be like, all right, it's your job to fix things now, where it really needs to be the whole team kind of stepping up. And also, you and I have both been saying, Matty should be the next captain whenever that happens. Yeah, you can't, if you're naming a captain right now, it absolutely cannot be him. That's the last thing he needs, is more pressure on him right now. But instead of a captain, so this one from Harvey, do y'all think the Kraken need a Revo type enforcer? Even a junior Ryan Reeves would be good for us. Seattle, the city, is tough, and Seattle, the team, is a wet noodle. So I think the Kraken actually do kind of have a junior Ryan Reeves, might even be a better player at this point, in John Hayden in the AHL. But I mean, do you think there's more urgency for that? I know we've both kind of been on record saying, maybe that they should give him a try in the lineup.
Yeah, certainly. I think John Hayden has earned it at this point, just with what we saw from him last year with the Kraken, what we've seen from him with the Firebirds. I haven't really seen too much of him so far this season with the Firebirds, but that will change tomorrow night. So looking forward to that. I do think that, yes, having somebody in the lineup who can, stick up for other guys or just be a tough customer, somebody that can, just let it be known that, all right, you can't really totally push us around, right? We're not going to let that happen. I look around the league, RJ, and you look at, say, Anaheim, right? You and I were both fairly critical of them bringing in some of the guys that they brought in this offseason, like a Radko Gudas, and you sign him to that contract, and you're kind of like, well, what's going on there? And then you hear Pat Verbeek, the general manager, talk about it later, and he was just like, look, team got pushed around. I'm bringing up all these young kids. I got Leo Carlson in the lineup. I'm going to have Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras in the lineup. I just need somebody there to make sure that they don't get pushed around. And you look at him being added to the lineup. He brought in some other big guys, and all of a sudden, those kids, nobody's bothering them. They're able to do whatever they want out there on the ice, and the Ducks start winning games, right? They look loose. They're having fun. They're a very skilled team, despite the fact that they have some of these bigger, tougher, slower players on the roster. They look 10 times faster than they did last year. So I do think that there is something to be said for that, even with this Coyotes team, right? Like, they've got a Lawson Krause out there. They've got some big, tough defensemen that are going to make sure that guys don't totally push around Logan Cooley or Clayton Keller. And then it frees up those guys. Even if they're not playing on the same line, it just frees up their skill guys to go out there and be skill guys. And I do think that the Kraken maybe don't have that right now.
Yeah, I certainly don't think there's anyone on the roster who is doing that job. And at this point, look, I think Devon Shore has played okay. I think he's done fine.
Yeah.
But, when you look at, I mean, I got to see how much ice time he had tonight. But if you're going to have somebody out there for 4 minutes and 50 seconds of ice time, I think it might as well be John Hayden, who at least brings that other element there. Nothing against Devin Shore, but that's just not his game.
Yeah, if somebody's getting less than 7 minutes, right, then you're talking about a very specific type of role player, right? And why not have it be, the thing that everybody seems to be on the same page about you needing from a role player, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. So this one from Jules. I do enjoy seeing Yanni on the ice, of him looking ahead to make plays for his teammates. However, would love to see him get some goals as well. And that has been a bit of a theme for Yanni. And I thought he had another solid game tonight, aside from maybe the penalties where you got to learn that they're calling it tight. What did you think about his game tonight? Because kind of some ups, some downs. He was involved on the Kraken's first goal, making a good pass to Eli Tolvanen, well executed 2-on-0. Does take 3 minor penalties. Second time in his career that he's done that. Last time was a while ago with Tampa, including a face-off violation penalty in that game. So I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but still, kind of an up and down game from him. What did you think of him tonight?
That it was up and down, that he, look, he was frustrated by those penalties too. Obviously didn't necessarily think all of them should have been called. I think, that's certainly a debate that could be had, I feel like, after everything. That being said, when he was out there, again, I felt like his line was doing a lot, and really, apparently it was doing more than I caught, because I believe that is the line that drove the most possession of any line in this game, despite the fact that it felt like the Beniers line was doing a lot, despite the fact that it felt like the Wenberg line was doing a lot. It was that Yanni Gourde line. So, I mean, they were reunited, right? Him, Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, and it was what we expect. That is the energy line for this team. That is the line that goes out there, and you know what? Everybody in the place starts sitting on the edge of their seat a little bit more, just because the pace picks up. I think that's really the biggest factor, and I do think that especially against a team like this with the D-core that they do have, the Coyotes, it really did kind of put them on their heels a little bit. They were getting worn out having to deal with them.
Yeah, it was a tough line for the Coyotes to deal with. I like the energy. I like the speed from them. And with Bjorkstrand being back with them too, they just picked up where they left off, those three. They always do. But back to a conversation we were just having about kind of having the tough guy there on the team, because we've got some newer chats here from Jay. What's up with Oleksiak not being a guy to stand up for our guys? Nicole agreeing with wanting to see Hayden. We got Sean saying, I frankly do not think the Kraken have the type of skill to be protected by guys like Gudas or Polino.
I almost said that, actually. I almost did say that, just because it's like, I don't know who that skilled player would be that needs to, that time and space. But and look,
I mean, Jared McCann for starters, I guess maybe not
Jared
the time
McCann
and space, but just at least preventing him from taking more shots to the head.
Yes, you need that. With Oleksiak, though, look, it's just not who he is. That's not his game. I know he's the biggest guy, but that doesn't mean he is that guy, right? And it doesn't mean that he should be that guy, right? Like, if somebody just happens to be the biggest, but they're not a skilled fighter, they're not skilled at pestering another team without taking a penalty. Like, it's a very specific skill set that we've seen that those guys have, RJ. And yes, size does play a role in it, because you do need to be intimidating. You do need to be able to finish checks hard. You do need to be able to square up with some tough customers in this league. So size, I'm not saying size doesn't play a role, and it is an important role, but Oleksiak has never been that guy. You go back to his times in Dallas, in Pittsburgh, this has been something that's followed him forever, is everybody expecting him to be more physical than he is. He's not even a guy who's going to go out there and lay out a big check. Like, that's just, it's not who he is. It's not his game. His game is to use his reach, try to keep guys to the outside, handle things that way, and clear things out net front. But it's just not who he is.
It's not. I mean, Lindsay pointing out, Oleksiak is a gentle giant. His fights are few and far between. And Rebecca says she appreciates it. I generally appreciate that Oleksiak isn't a spicy player. Always drives me crazy that other players will pick fights with him just because he's large. And I mean, that really is the case. I think he is kind of a gentle giant. And even last game against Calgary, there were a few plays where I noted with some of the people with me in the press box where he had a chance to really deck somebody or really slam someone into the boards and make a big hit that could potentially hurt somebody, and he laid off. that's generally what he tends to do, because I think he doesn't want to hurt anybody. And, on a human level, man, I have a hard time saying that you should maybe be different, as a person. Although, Coop pointing out, I'm sorry, that's all well and good, but what is the point of a gentle giant in a sport like hockey? It does lead to a disadvantage.
Maybe. I mean, is it a disadvantage, the fact that his reach is still way longer than anybody else's on this team when it comes to defending, right? Like, you and I remember, think back to when Zdeno Chara and Dougie Hamilton played together, right? Dougie Hamilton's another guy who has a lot of size, but he's maybe not the most physical presence around. He's more skilled than Oleksiak. I think nobody would argue that, but he's another one who's just as big, but he doesn't fight. He's not the enforcer on any of his teams. But you think back to those Boston teams, RJ, when you had Dougie Hamilton and Zdeno Chara, just the fact that they both had that reach with their stick, right? Because not only is their arm longer, their stick's longer. And they could just completely shut things down just because of how big they were. They never needed to use that size completely. Chara did when he needed to do something.
Oh, yeah.
He was there. He was a captain for a reason, and a really, damn good one at that. But there are still advantages to having size in hockey, even if you're not going to use it to punish guys physically, to go out and fight somebody, right? Like, you have reach. You're able to, when you do battle net front, you've got the leverage to win that battle, something Oleksiak does each and every time you see him out there, right? He's the one defenseman on this team you never see get boxed out, right? Just because it's hard. You can't. He's too big. So there's plenty of ways you can use size without being a goon or being an enforcer or being a fighter or any of those things. And I will just say also, we do live in the day and age where if you are a professional athlete in a contact sport, it's impossible to ignore all of the data and research that is coming out regarding head injuries, not even, known head injuries, subconcussive injuries, all of those things that go on. You look at the NFL, and 96% of, players that have been tested for CTE have tested positive for CTE. 96%. I know hockey isn't quite as smashing heads together as that is, but the numbers from hockey are very, very high as well. And so I'm never going to fault somebody who doesn't want to go out there and put themselves in a position where they're going to have to deal with something like that via fighting. Right. I'm never going to, say somebody's, not doing something right because they don't want to get punched in the face repeatedly. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? It's just not okay. And to that same thing, when you play physical, it affects your body too, right? Like, when you go out and lay out a big hit, your body's still absorbing some of that impact. There's still a lot of things going on your end as well. And if, these guys care about each other. I know they're on different teams, but to your point, you don't want to go out there and hurt somebody, right? It's kind of hard to go out there and just drive a bunch of guys headfirst into the boards when you know that could lead to very, very serious ramifications for them in the future and their family. So I don't know. I understand it. I think this is something that hockey's going through beyond just the Kraken, but I do think that we're starting to see things shift and a lot of players' mentality shifting just because of what we know now that we didn't know before. I mean, I've seen Aaron Ward talking about it. I mean, he was a tough customer back in his day, and he talked about how he and his fellow players, they're just waiting for it. They're just waiting for these things because they all fought. They all did the big hits. They took the big hits. They were that guy for their team. And now they're just waiting for the first signs of dementia in their 40s and 50s and what that's going to do, and how they're having to really make sure they cherish every moment with their family because they really do believe that this is coming for them given what they did to their bodies. And so it's hard when you have that previous generation of players talk about, hey, I kind of wish now I didn't do that, to fault the current generation for not doing it.
Yeah, I've preached, Dylan. And Jen with the thank you, Dylan, Rebecca, Dylan for director of player safety, Zoe seconding that. I think, it'd certainly be an improvement. But yeah, I think, you don't want to force Oleksiak to do that job. That's just not his job, not his game, not the kind of personality he has. And I will say, because I know Coop was pushing back a little bit on that. I get that it's nice. Oleksiak is a big, cuddly, kind person. I love it, yes, but it's so frustrating to say it's not his game. Good players change their game to fill a need for the team. I don't think he needs to also, because you've got John Hayden waiting in the wings. He does that. He's accepted that's his role, and that's kind of what he does. Go ahead.
Well, and again, are we just singling Oleksiak out because he's the biggest guy? right? Right now,
that's true.
anybody needs to do it, right? You talked about it. When that happens to McCann, none of the 4 other Kraken on the ice did anything about it, right? That's way more of a problem than just the one guy who happens to be biggest not doing something about it, right?
And
it's the fact that nobody's doing it.
Right. And exactly as Jessica pointing out, Donato would have destroyed Mangiapane for that. I miss Donnie. Ryan Donato, he's 6 foot even. He's 6 foot. He's not the biggest guy, but he'd be right there in Mangiapane's face as a response for doing what he did to Jared McCann. It's got to be somebody, and that message has to be sent. It doesn't even have to be fight. You could be just trying to let me at him. It could be anything like that.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight right then and there. Yeah.
The show. Yes. There's an element of it that is showmanship, but I just think that, I think the only reason that Oleksiak keeps getting singled out is just because he's the biggest. And what we're really talking about at the end of the day is the fact that nobody on the Kraken is doing this. And, yes, that includes Oleksiak, but it includes 20 other guys too.
Yeah, it does. And then Viren also pointing out, how many times last year did we talk about Oleksiak not quite looking right, possibly for injury reasons? And I know he was dealing with some stuff, last year too. So that's got to be on your mind as well. I think this is a really good kind of discussion back and forth here. Thank you everybody in chat, kind of providing the points, counterpoints. I think that was, really good there. We kind of talked through this, all part of the Emerald City therapy after a loss tonight. So moving on here though, got a comment here from Casey. Hey, did anyone notice the defense on the Coyotes' first goal tonight? It was weird that I think we had 3 guys back to defend and only one Coyote was able to score. Larson seemed to screen Joey's view. Now, Dylan, do you kind of remember that goal? I think it was Michelli walking in. And I don't know if Larson got a piece of it or not, but kind of take us through that goal and what you thought of it.
So I had a clear angle of that from really right behind him, right, as he's walking in, as he shoots, and I could watch the puck go all the way in. It did not look like it hit Larson at all. It did not change direction at all. Like it was just there. Personally, I think it was just kind of like a clean win. Like he just beat him. I mean, it was far to the side. Did it hit the post? I think it hit the post.
It did hit the post. It went posted in. So it was a really good shot.
It was just kind of a good shot. And it was in that sweet spot area, right, where it's above the pad, but below, what side was he playing? His blocker? So
it was the blocker.
Yeah. So it's one of those where it's kind of right in that weird zone where as a goaltender, when you're in that situation, especially because it's far out, so you're not expecting the shot. You haven't dropped down into butterfly yet. You're having to drop down into butterfly, also try to push off to the side that the shot is heading towards. And when you do that, I mean, you're just not able to cover everything, right? You can cover where your blocker is, which is always going to be a little bit high because you've just dropped, right? And then your pad is obviously on the ground because you've just dropped into butterfly. So I looked at it and I just saw a shot that beat a goaltender clean. It's, it stinks, but that's what I saw.
Yeah. And then Casey following up there, should Larson try to poke check or something there?
Yeah, Larson could have played more aggressively, especially because you are talking about a 1v3 situation, right? There's no reason not to be aggressive, especially because then you could rush that shot. Even if he's going to take the shot, maybe he's not able to find that sweet spot, or maybe he's off just enough that when it hits the post, it bounces out instead of bouncing in. I will always advocate for more aggressive defensive approaches when appropriate, and that is definitely a situation where that would have been appropriate. I will also always advocate for defensemen using their stick more. I do think that is something the Kraken need to work on a little bit. It's kind of the one thing Brian Dumoulin does really well, and I hope that the rest of the guys kind of get that from him.
Yeah, and then the one thing I'd add to that play too, if you go back and watch it, the Kraken were in the middle of getting a line change there as the Coyotes were moving through the neutral zone, and I think that just kind of froze the guys on the ice who might have even been looking over at the bench trying to figure out, okay, who do we have, who do we not have, what's the numbers on this situation? I think it froze them just long enough that Larson kind of backed off, maybe a little bit further than he would have liked. You normally like to contest the blue line a little bit more, but that was all the time that Michelli needed to at least get that shot off, and it was a heck of a shot.
Yeah, and you're certainly sitting back, you're going through the line change. There might have been an element of, look, it's only one guy coming in. They're getting, maybe they're doing a change too, and you just feel like, all right, he's just going to kind of cycle around, or he's just going to toss one from far. And you know what I mean? Like how many millions of times have we watched that happen, RJ, right? Where it's just kind of like, it's only one guy against 3. He's not really going to treat the situation any more serious. A lot of times they just dump that into the corner and they head off themselves. So I get the Kraken maybe being caught off guard there a little bit. It's not an excuse. It's just maybe what that was going through their minds.
Yeah, sometimes, shot just beats you, it beats you. And Casey saying, right, I thought it was kind of odd, almost better if he just gets out of the way so Joey could see it. But yeah, I think again, just kind of frozen in that moment and just trying to kind of be in the way. All right. So as we hit the, kind of 54 and a half minute mark, just want to say kind of re-up everyone, do kind of a, last call type of thing, because we have a lot of comments in here about the Alexiak stuff, the toughness stuff. But yeah, if you have anything else, you want to discuss, feel free to put that in chat right now. And we'll kind of get to that with the last 5 minutes or so that we have. I'll kind of scroll back in chat, see if I can find something, because there's a lot in chat just from that topic. So I kind of have to scroll back through it. This one from Matty, it was on that topic, but if Yamamoto was 6'2", he could be that guy. Man, yeah. I'd love picturing a 6'2" Kyler Yamamoto. I mean, he could be a 30 goal scorer if he just had that size to work with.
I was just going to say, like, he would, I don't know why the first person I thought of, RJ, was Mikko Rantanen.
Oh yeah.
But just think of like the way he cuts to the net and everything. If he had the size to go through somebody instead of having to kind of sneak under and around, right? That's who comes to mind first.
Yeah. This one a ways back from Sarah. Small barns make me miss watching college hockey every weekend. Yeah, college hockey is fun. And I mean, yeah, that's a college barn right there behind you.
Tell me this is not the solution for Winnipeg, RJ. You're only selling 11,000 seats anyway. Just make it like this. Make it an experience. Make it a place people would travel all across Canada to come to your place to watch their team. Like I really think for some of the markets that the NHL does struggle with attendance, this isn't the worst option in the world. I know it looks bad because it's not the number that you want, but it's not like Arizona was pulling more than this really anyway. And you look at a situation like Winnipeg, they're not really pulling more than this anyway. So you might as well just make it a better experience for the few people who are still trying to support their team, right? I know that makes too much sense for the NHL to ever consider.
Although if Winnipeg's winning, any Canadian team, if they're winning, is going to sell out an 18,000 seat barn. But I will say, like a 5,000 seat arena in Winnipeg would be a madhouse. Oh, can you imagine the atmosphere? It would be incredible.
It would be a special thing, and I guarantee you those tickets would cost a fortune, and the team would make roughly the same amount of money, I bet.
Yeah, charge $1,000 a ticket, and you're set there. And you know what? They'd sell for that.
People from Toronto would travel for that game. They'd pay anything.
Yeah, they sure would. And thank you, Jay, by the way, for encouraging everyone to like the stream. I have seen you do that a few times here, as you always do. Appreciate that from you, Jay. And then question from Zoe. How does the lineup stay the same or change when Tanev comes back? Now, Brandon Tanev, he did make the road trip. He was sitting, I guess, a few seats over from you in the makeshift press box there. But yeah, so I think we can probably start thinking about maybe when he comes back into the lineup, who comes out, how does the lineup change?
Well, I mean, the number one thing is he would be inserted into this lineup so he could fix the penalty kill, right? Like, yep. So we know he would join the lineup. I don't think anybody's necessarily, played so amazing that it's like, wow, there's just no room for him. It goes back to what we thought originally, right, RJ, where you're going to have Yamamoto and Ty Cartier splitting duties in and out of the lineup together just based on who you're playing against, probably, right? I mean, I don't know that one of those guys has played so significantly better than the other that it's been made clear which is the guy that would, be the more obvious scratch.
Yeah, no, I agree with it. I think you just kind of go with your feel there, but you definitely have to put
Shore is the guy that
Shore. Well, Shore would be the guy. Yeah, actually, he'd be the obvious one you'd put in, and I think that would be a huge upgrade. Certainly, on the PK where Shore's not really killing penalties. So yeah, if Tanev can come back at all soon, I mean, Shore would be the guy for sure. Let's see this from Circling Seattle Sports. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts. How much truly needs to change about this team? Feels like there's a lot of positive, but the struggles outweigh the good.
I mean, things like the PK need to change. The power plays, I get, finally getting going. So there's something there. I don't know. It's the same stuff that you could say for a lot of teams, though, right? Like, oh man, if they had another superstar or two, this team would be fantastic. If they had, that one of those 2 or 3 top defensemen that can play half a game and just nothing ever happens when they're out there, things would be great. That's really, though, what you're looking at as far as trying to upgrade. I think, could you maybe make some moves if you needed to, if this really continues and you get to that Thanksgiving mark and it's really kind of on shaky ground? Could you make a trade? I don't know, maybe, but just the way the roster is constructed, I don't know that there's anything you can really work with, RJ.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of said this in my armchair GM chats. Right now, you're really limited as far as what you can do. This team is what it is. It's got a lot of potential to change in the offseason coming up, but for right now, this group just kind of has to figure it out.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
Yeah. And then Light, here's my honest question, and it is a hot take, but at what point do we bring Shane up just to see what happens? Lol. He's playing great, and I think we could use what he's bringing to the Birds. So I think we have pretty thoroughly covered this between the last two deep dive podcasts. Or, my take is that you just can't, you have a plan, you've got to stick to it. You can't mess with this momentum. And you, of course, on this week's deep dive podcast, preaching patience there, like in using Quentin Byfield as an example. I imagine that hasn't changed in your mind, right?
No, yes, I'm not as into the whole trust the plan as maybe you are, as much as I'm just like, where is he supposed to play, right? Like, what you gonna bump Yanni Gord down to the fourth line so that Shane Wright gets decent minutes, right? If you're just gonna you're gonna get rid of Belmar, the guy you brought in to win faceoffs in overtime and do a lot for you and help out on the PK and things like that. Like, I don't know where he's supposed to go. Right now, he's on track. He's developing. He's getting better. So you want to continue that. The only way to continue that would be to get serious minutes at the NHL level. And I don't know who you'd get rid of. And I'm sure, without even looking, the comment section's all saying Wenberg. But again, Wenberg's not playing as bad as we all think he is either. So, and he's kind of put in a tough spot with his wingers changing all the time to kind of benefit other people. So it's just one of those situations. There's just no room for him. It doesn't make sense for that reason. If, say, there is an injury to one of your top three centers, though, I am starting to get to the point, RJ, where it's like, you know what? You might as well call up Shane while he's on a hot streak, while he does have that confidence before the wear and tear of a full professional season starts getting to him. I do think that is something that the Kraken should consider. Plan be damned.
Yeah, I mean, I still think, and I agree with B's point here. Yeah, bringing Wright up just puts all the pressure on him to turn the team around on his own. You can't be doing it off of a losing streak.
He can't be the savior figure.
Right, and it's got to be clear that that's not the case. Because if you call him up right now, it's going to look like, okay, it's your job to fix this kid. It's your job to finish, start bringing some goals. That's not good for him. That pressure is not good for him. And yeah, Koopa is against it also. I think you risk slamming Shane's development to a halt, risk shaking his confidence all over again. And via end, keep Shane away from whatever weird curses may or may not be affecting this team.
Right.
Speaking of any good/fun rituals to appease the hockey gods and get Matty a goal. I feel like Lindsay's the expert on that one.
Yeah, that is definitely a Lindsay question. I don't know.
So if you're in here, yeah, let us know what you would recommend there, Lindsay. And then from Jay, if you're going to the game on Veterans Day, I'll see you there. RJ, one of these days, I'll be able to hang out and meet you in 105. I will be there. So yeah, just let me know. I'd be happy to meet up with you. That goes for anyone who's watching this too. If you're at a game, want to meet up at intermission or whatever, say hi, just let me know. Send me a DM on Twitter or how you know how to reach out to us. If you're watching this, you probably know how to reach us. But let me know and I'd be happy to meet up with you. Let's see. And then, Matty's saying, I don't think Wenberg's as bad as everyone thinks he is. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Wenberg, I felt, had a strong game tonight.
He did.
And I agree. So I think he had a strong game tonight. So because we're at an hour 3, I'm sure you probably need to get going. You're on the road. You're in Arizona here. I think, and Dexter, great seeing you again, Dylan. Yes. Doing my best to grow the ECH community here in the desert. That's great. I'm glad you got to meet with some of the people there. I'll let you talk about it for a sec. But
no, I was just gonna say it was great to see you again as well, Dexter. You're doing a great job. I had a bunch of kind words. It's always great to hear that. And yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, it's just so fun for me to, kind of break out. Yes, I've got Afra at home and that is fantastic and all that good stuff. But you know what? Being able to hang out with everybody, watch hockey, specifically in an atmosphere like this, where it's maybe not me having to run down an elevator to go say hi and do stuff with people and then wait for the elevators to unlock so I can go back up to the press bridge like you have to do, RJ. The fact that it very much feels like we could just sit there and watch hockey together is just, I mean, that's what sports is all about. It's that community aspect. I've talked about it a million times. It's just one of those universal culture things all humans have. It's good for our souls, and being able to be here tonight in a situation like this and talk with you, Dexter, it's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And I love this community. Love that, we've still got so many people in here after a tough loss like this, all hanging out, all talking to each other. And, it's a great place to be. It's not the only place that you can do that. Also got to thank the sponsor, Flat Stick Pub, another good place for the community to go hang out. Season long specials here, especially with the Kraken coming back home soon. Before the game, 50% off games. Play some games against your fellow ECH community members, and post game $1 off of beer. And we'll hopefully have some more news from them to share with you too. I got a meeting with them in a couple days. Hopefully, plan some get-togethers and figure out some of that stuff. So, thank you again to Flat Stick Pub. Really appreciate them sponsoring each and every one of these post game lives. There's the overlay.
Yeah.
Still a little new to this. Go ahead, Dylan.
I was just gonna say, did you do a fun segue at the beginning?
Not as I it doesn't hold a candle to you, Dylan. I don't know. You can go back and look at it. I'm sorry, Dylan.
Got one job, and that's the
I know.
That's
I
to
know.
do everything I do. After doing
Well,
everything you normally do for this game. Thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, we can't all be as good as Dylan. I think that's lesson we can take away from this. But you know what? I can do one thing that you usually do, and that is say, see you all next time.